Hello and welcome to Memory Safe. My name is Dennis Fisher. I'm the editor-in-chief of Decipher. With me today is Daniel Cuthbert. Daniel is the global head of cybersecurity research at Banco Santander. And he has also done a whole bunch of other stuff in his career on both the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. He's on the Black Hat Review Board and is also on the UK's Cybersecurity Advisory Committee, so he kind of knows what he's doing. Daniel, thanks so much for being here, man.
You made me sound cool. I don't know about that, but I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Me too. Me too. I'm really excited to get to talk to you. I know it's late in the day for you in the UK, so I really appreciate you doing it. Yeah. We've known each other online for a long time, but we've only met, I think, maybe once or twice in the real world, thanks to this stupid pandemic and other
Yeah,
situations. But
almost criminal, if
yeah,
I'm honest.
I agree. I agree. So I'm really looking forward to this and getting your thoughts on the 12 or 10 questions that we have for you. It was supposed to be 12. We cut it back. So there you go. All right. So you ready?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. Question number one, Daniel. When did you get your first computer?
It's that one there, the ZX Spectrum.
For real?
That was it. That was the first one. So
Oh my God.
Not a little, and I still have it. So yeah, this was with the old tape deck and piracy, copying tapes you shouldn't have. But like this is what sparked the interest really, because it was cool. It was like buying a magazine. If you wanted to build something, you have to copy what was in the magazine, and heaven help you if you made a typo.
Right.
But it was this gray box that just kind of did it.
Oh my God. How old were you? Do you remember?
Showing my age now. 8 or 9.
8 or 9. Yeah. Was it a big deal? Do you remember like what the circumstances were? Was it like a Christmas gift or like you saved up your, allowance money to go get it?
I saved up a lot. We just moved to South Africa. So sanctions were still very much a thing. And yeah, saved up, worked at a local shop on the weekend, bagging, shopping, and stacking shelves and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, so it was kind of just odd jobs here and there where I could, and that's how I got started.
That's wild. Oh my gosh. What was it? It had the little tape drive on there. What else could you had to have an external monitor. Obviously you needed like a
TV. You had a TV.
Yep. Yeah.
You had your TV, all right? So that was a thing. Like you would plug it into the family TV because having your own TV was a bit luxury.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like shared type stuff. And then from there, as dial-up became a thing, that's when it kind of progressed from the 286 all the way up. So
Yeah. That's crazy. I haven't seen one of those in a million years. It's really cool that you still have that. I can't believe it survived like what must have been a bunch of moves and God knows how many packings and unpackings.
it did, and it's funny. I did during the lockdown. I started a hacking project. So there's a very cool obscure project where you had a drum machine for this, and I've actually got that drum machine. It was really hard to find, and also the sound card. So I've got a whole lot of sound chips from the mid '80s, early '90s. So yeah, like it sparked a hell of a lot of creativity, at least for me, that you could have a machine that you could do what you wanted to do, and from there.
Yeah. Were you always a tinkerer, like even before you got that machine?
No, so I was never really into the whole building and breaking type stuff. I was a skater,
Yeah.
BMXer. So it was more of a game thing. But I think being curious as to how it worked, like how could you take a tape that if you played it in your hi-fi, you heard all these noises. You're like, well, how the hell does that relate to the stuff on the screen?
Right.
Like, that's what got me into like, but how does that work? How does the noise become something on the screen? What happens if I press, all those little things that I think even today I'm still doing, that curiosity, no matter be it computers or photography or something else, it's that how does it work?
I'm still wondering how computers work after all these years. I really don't know. I
You'll
don't.
be both. I mean, literally, I use it on a daily basis and I have no freaking idea.
I'm not sure anyone does. If there's one person on earth that truly understands, like maybe Joe Grand, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, the wizard.
Yeah, might be a half a dozen people, but that's probably a high estimate. I don't know. Okay, so question number two: when did you first go online?
Um, Probably it was 95, I think it was. 95, 96, possibly. There was a local ISP in South Africa called Pix.za, and that was dial up.
Yeah,
It was super expensive. And that was where I started with the whole IRC exploring. Wow, there was this thing where you could go to these bulletin boards and read what other people were saying across the planet. Like that was that whole wow. South Africa still had, the apartheid regime was coming to an end, but there was still weirdness. It was like, you could all of a sudden chat to people in America. Like that's wild.
yeah.
So yeah, I'd say mid 90s.
Was there any sort of like you mentioned, chatting with people here in the U.S. Was there any sort of local folks that you were talking to in South Africa, or was it mainly just sort of anybody you could find wherever they were?
It was mostly friends in South Africa. The guys I went to school with.
Okay.
But I didn't really speak to locals other than that kind of community there in Johannesburg.
Yeah, I remember having the same kind of experience when I was growing up. I'm a little older than you, I think, but the same kind of like dial up thing where I would be talking to one of my friends who literally lived like 2 blocks away, but it was cooler to talk to him like, on a BBS or like send an email and wait 9 hours for a reply or whatever.
Yep.
It's like,
Yep.
well, I could just call him or walk down the street, but there's this computer thing. I got to do something with it.
Yeah. 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 Very, very similar. And I think that's what got me into kind of the early IRC, excuse me, listening to what people were doing and kind of then going into the tinkering style community.
Mm,
I wouldn't have called it hacking community. I think it was more of a tinkering, exploring type thing, if anything. Everything around IRC at the time. I suppose you probably could say early stages of hacking back then, but it was more of a hey, I've got this and I can do that, or hey, I've got this book you want to share type stuff, or hey, here's this this thing you can go and look at. There's an
right.
FTP server.
Yeah. I was never really on IRC until I was much, much older, not as a teenager or anything, but all the stories that I've heard from, my friends or people we know that talk about how central that was to their experience and their sort of introduction into, what has become their lifelong passion is kind of crazy.
Yeah, and look, it wasn't. I'm not looking at it through rose tinted glasses. It was shit. Let's be brutally honest. Like it was. It, you took, you hear IRC wars and that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
it wasn't a nice, happy kumbaya style place. But it was like a lot of the people that I spoke to back then. I'm still friends with now, and that's quite cool.
Yeah.
Chatting to, and this was probably 98, 99. That was when I was speaking to a lot of people that were THC, that kind of crowd back then, because that was probably peak IRC, I guess.
Yep.
So, yeah, it was definitely a hub of sorts.
Yeah. I mean, every online community gets to the point where it just turns into a cesspool. Like it doesn't matter, if it's a photography hobby club or like a golf message board or whatever. Like at some point it like you said, it just kind of turns to crap.
Yeah,
You know?
it was weird. Like I spent more time in the Linux Solaris community. So I was really good friends with Rastaman, who was building Enlightenment at the time, and Jeff Mandrake, who were going down that whole desktop type thing with Linux and building all that kind of stuff. And that was really cool because that got me into, well, you know, all of a sudden you could have two monitors if you were quite flush. Well, how do you get Linux working with two monitors? you cry a lot, right? You spend a lot of time in X trying to get the configs to work. And there
Yeah.
was that whole thing of tinkering and, like getting your Windows placement. And I think I learned probably most of the core Unix, Linux skills I've got from those early days of just trying to get sound cards working in Linux, like trying to get multiple monitors working, where if you went to sleep, it came back with everything working again. So
There's a lot of stuff with Linux that just really doesn't make any sense to me
no,
whatsoever. Like,
no,
just honestly.
no,
Yeah.
definitely not, definitely not.
All right. Question number 3. What was your introduction to hacker culture? I think you might have sort of hit on it a little bit, but more like security hacker culture.
Probably I was working at PSINet, um, building a lot of early infrastructure. So this is pre.com. Um,
Yeah.
there was, a lot of websites at the time where you were starting to share stuff. A local South African guy called Govboy, he was responsible for hack.coza, which was, if not the first, one of the first exploit sharing sites. So always had problems with hosting. I helped him host it uh, through dubious means on the PSI networks. And that kind of got me into really understanding the attacks that were coming against it, how to stop the attacks, the people doing it, working with the people, finding bugs, writing exploits, all that kind of stuff. So that was, I'm trying to think now, that was probably, late 90s.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds right for PSINet. Yeah. Had you been sort of experimenting with writing code or stuff like that on your own?
Yeah, so obviously as you found the bugs, and it was a lot easier those days. I had a thing I was trying to learn Perl at the time, so why not like use Perl to write these? I was really bad at assembly, so you had all these cool people that were very good at shellcode and everything else. I was like, shit, that's just voodoo, right? I've got this thing called Perl, and you beg, borrow, steal, get them to write whatever, put that in there, and off you went. So yeah.
That's wild. What was was there any sort of like infrastructure security team at PSINet, or was it just like, here's some guys that know about computers, let them sort of
It was pretty much that. It was
yeah.
so I was a network engineer, predominantly looking at rolling out um, networks, firewalls, mostly around Sun equipment, and I also got the security side. So part of the role was doing that. When I did the job at Financial Times to help build FT.com, so that was the .com, first .com boom.
Hmm.
Again, system administrator. That was my title as such, but the job was break stuff. Right, you're good at the networking stuff. You're good at understanding that. There's got these web applications that we're now building. Try and break them. Try and use experience there, and that was kind of the start of the so-called pen testing industry as such. That's you never had people doing that job specifically. They were always doing it alongside other more traditional roles.
Yeah,
And all of a sudden, you had the birth of the offensive testing thing. So a good friend of mine, Chris McNabb, um, he was brought in by the Financial Times to do a pen test. And yeah, so that was that whole consultancy pen testing type thing.
I know you've done both offense and defense. Is there one that sort of, is more attractive to you, like overall? Is it more fun for you to, build something, or is it more fun for you to go in and try and stomp on something that somebody else built?
It's a good question. I loved doing the offensive stuff, and I still do. Um, my time at SensePost was probably the most creative I've ever been in my hacking career.
Hmm.
Is we were doing everything from implants to finding bugs to weaponizing bugs to doing amazing offensive training at Black Hat and breaking into everything. Sorry, that's 7 years. Like we did some phenomenal hacks.
That was a pretty crazy team that was at that.
It was. It
Yeah.
was. I think looking back now, I love the building and the defensive side, mostly because I find it harder.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
like it's look. Don't get me wrong. I do enjoy a good hack. I do enjoy looking at people go about being creative because I think there's a very, very strong correlation between creativity and hacking. But being on the other side, thwarting such attacks and making it so the system's usable or it's scalable or you don't really see the security layer and just building things, I find more of a challenge. And for me, that's quite attractive.
Yeah, the it's attractive because it's difficult part is really interesting to me. That's, I mean, I don't do anything on the scale of what you're talking about, but for me, that's the way that I approach like some writing projects. Like there's stuff that I know how to do really well, and there's stuff that is really difficult for me, and stuff I can do really well is, yeah, I can do that, but what's the point? Let me go try and do something that maybe I've never done before, or I know that I'm not very good at, whatever that happens to be. Because, if you know how to do something, you're like, okay, cool, I've done that.
Yeah.
Maybe I can do it in a different way or something along those lines. But if it's a challenge, that does make it a little bit more attractive to me too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm finding that with a lot of the stuff I'm coding now. I'm very lucky that I work with actual software engineers. Um, so they'll take my janky ass code and look at it and go, "Oh, it's nice, but have you thought of no?" And well, dude, error reporting. Have you heard of it? And I'm learning a hell of a lot. Like just the complexities, the nuances of building robust code that just works all the time, can preempt people doing malicious stuff. Like all the hard things that a lot of people think is really easy. Like for me, that's right now heaven for me. I'm really, really enjoying that because it's pushing me heavily all the time.
The part you mentioned earlier about, the correlation between creativity and hacking, I think is something that I've found over the years, just talking to folks in the industry, is some of the, most brilliant minds in our community, they're really great at this, but they're also like, you're a photographer, a lot of folks are musicians, or they do something else that is another creative outlet that they're also incredibly proficient at, or they're like mathematicians. You're like, what, how, I don't even understand, how can you be that good at all these, like, two things or three things or four things? There's definitely a very big correlation there.
So there is. One of the guys on my team, Dr. Mark Carney, phenomenal cryptographer. I'm loving doing a lot of the post quantum stuff we're doing with him at the moment. Um, he's a trained classical musician, so a violinist. And it's like maths, which traditionally is a different breed of people,
Yeah.
and a violinist. You're like, wow, you would never normally associate that. But you're right. There's a lot in our industry where you see two polar opposites in the creative space, but they kind of just work together.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. I'd love to see it though.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 4. When did you think you might make this a career? Whatever this happens to be. Security, computers, whatever.
So I started when there was no computer security. There was nothing like that. I trained to be a chef, so I went to catering school. First couple of jobs were chefs, working my way up the ranking. The chefs, my parents owned restaurants. That was going to be my life. I didn't necessarily enjoy the 16-hour days.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't understand how hard a life is for a chef. Like it's brutal. And then when we moved back to the UK, I was still cooking for such and moved up to London from the coast. And I saw a job for a help desk engineer at one of the local ISPs. And again, I was getting better at understanding how things were working on the internet and how I could manipulate them and fiddle with them. And
Mhm.
that kind of just started into, oh, wow, you could maybe do this as a career rather than being a chef. And kind of that's when I finally realized, like, wow, maybe I can do this and not spend 16 hours a day, 6 days a week working, busting my ass as a chef. I could sit and tinker with computers. And that was that light bulb moment.
The chef life seems absolutely awful to me. And that is strictly based on movies and TV shows like The Bear, or, things like that, where you're just like, oh, you get screamed at and belittled by people that you don't even like for, as you said, 16 hours a day for like shit pay. and in sweltering conditions in, the back of some restaurant somewhere.
Yeah, it's tough. It is tough, and it really upsets me when people do that because I'm like, they're there to cook you amazing food.
Yeah.
And like they put a lot of effort into the dishes that they make, and you probably can't cook, and yet you're belittling. And there's this weird thing where I get quite angry when I see people belittle service staff.
Hmm.
I'm like, just wow, knock it off. Like it's lame. I'm sorry. You need to have a little bit of respect and be a little bit humble.
Yeah, I agree. So the sort of light bulb moment, as you said, there was no real security industry at that point. It was just sort of folks were kind of making it up as they went along. Then honestly, they were starting pen test firms or consulting companies, or if you were a network engineer and you had an interest in security, you became the security person for your company.
Yep.
So from there, was it just sort of like, wow, this is really fun and there's actually some money in it, maybe I should kind of keep going with this?
Yeah, so it's funny. The early days, I think, of the security, like you said, the pen test industry, you came from either sysadmin, networking engineer, developer. Like you morphed your way into it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was doing a lot of stuff at PSINet. I then got a job working at Vodafone, helping build the first 2G networks. So that was quite cool to really experience scale of sorts. And then from there, it just kind of morphed into the security thing. As those industries kind of grew up and the positions grew up, it was like, well, you've been doing network security for 4 years now without a badge. Well, go and do network security. And
Yeah.
you get how networks work, you get how the internet works, you understand SunKit and all the other lovely networking kit. Well, it makes sense to understand how to break it because you used to deploy it type of stuff.
Yeah, it does make sense, and it it's kind of crazy to me how many people came from that. People, I guess, of our generation who came from that sort of just go and figure it out sort of background. You know how this stuff works, so yeah, see if you can break it and figure out how other people might break it,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's kind of where our security industry came from.
Yeah, and I don't look down upon that period. I think I learned a hell of a lot. I learned how to, like we joked about using Linux. I,
Hmm.
I think doing that and getting the pain of Linux working on laptops. When we had the first batch of, God, I sound old, notebooks, right? The librettos and the Toshibas and the Rolly Mount, getting Linux to work on them, like it wasn't trivial. Like, you didn't just plug in the disks, or if you had Slackware, the 89 or 90 stiffy disks that you had, and then get it installed. Like it was hard work, but it taught at least me how to be methodical, how to debug stuff, how to work out how it doesn't work, and then also understood the layering. Like you've got the kernel, and this plugs into the kernel does this, and you've got a user land on top of it. For me, that was such an important part of my journey that I still use today. Like I am still a big user of Linux and Unix and the command line more than anything else. I think that stems from having to do it as pain. There were some things that were a pain in the ass. When we got into wireless war driving with the old
Hmm.
Aeronet PCM CIA cards,
Yeah,
again, like you had to debug the networking stack because that shit just didn't work out of the box.
not at all.
But it was enjoyable when it did. You're like, oh my god, there's a packet. Look, I can see. Oh wow, yeah, type stuff.
Do you think, I mean, this is a weird hypothetical, but do you think if you had sort of, if there was a traditional route available, like if you were coming out of university now and, looked around and thought, oh, security looks fun, do you think you would be attracted to it at this point, like the way that things are now?
That's a very good question. Probably not. I feel for newcomers in the industry. I'm at that very privileged stage, and I mean this, where I get to mentor quite a few people.
Hmm.
They come in and they see such a vast, wild industry. How do you choose?
Yeah.
There are so many camps now that all require intense amounts of interest and knowledge and prerequisites and all that kind of stuff. I think that would put me off. And you almost have people pigeonholed. I think if you look at my generation, your generation, we were almost jack of all trades as such.
Right.
now you kind of don't get that. You get people. I do threat intelligence. I do bug bounty app testing, but not network level testing. I do red teaming only. And I think that would probably put me off.
Yeah. It would be really difficult to choose because I didn't, some of the smartest people I know took the path that you did where they had to sort of learn everything as they went and they did a little bit of everything along the way. But if you're just starting out now, yeah, how would you even sort of pick a lane
Yeah,
that, if you wanted to do red teaming or if you wanted to do threat intel, then you sort of have to pigeonhole yourself
yeah,
and be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for X number of years so I can get really good at it. And that's the only real way to succeed.
yeah, yeah.
You know, it's not an easy path.
That's
All right. Question number 5. I think you just mentioned it, but what was your alternate career idea?
so obviously I was a chef.
Yeah.
My background's also fashion. Um, so
Fashion.
yeah, fashion,
Okay.
design, and that element. My wife's a makeup artist, so kind of after my arrest for hacking in 2004, and when we moved to Thailand, I turned my back on computer security and everything, and I went back to fashion. So I went back to being a fashion photographer and doing makeup with her, and like little things like our first date, I took her to Milan. Um, so
Come
like,
on. Jeez.
yeah, because like, well, that's what you do, right? And when it comes to handbags and shoes, I because I studied that because it was a thing. I'm like, well, I could definitely see myself going back to fashion. My sister's a big fashion designer, so yeah, I could definitely see that being a thing. And to be fair, the similarities are huge because some stylists are just like project managers. They are hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I I had no idea. Fashion photographer.
yeah.
So for like just sort of freelance for whatever you could pick up or
Yeah, so we shot quite a bit. Yeah, if you Google, you will see some of my images online. Thai Vogue, a lot for a few publications, Mac Makeup, Shuamura, Bobby Brown. Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
That's crazy. That's a completely different world. That's not even tangentially connected.
yeah. Yeah,
Do
so I
you
think I'd
miss
probably do that. I will probably. I still like. It's nice because I get to see the other side with my sister, and my wife. So it's still quite cool being involved there.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you miss it? But it sounds like you still have sort of a connection to it.
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Yeah, that's really cool. What a man, that's awesome. But it's you kind of set yourself up for failure though. Like you have nowhere to go but down after the first date in Milan. Like, how, where do you go from there?
Well, I married her.
Yeah, obviously it worked out, but
It
I
was
mean,
21 years ago. Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a baller thing to do. But hey, if you're
why
trying to
not?
impress the girl, let's go to Milan for the weekend. Yeah.
It's pretty good. Usually it's like dinner and a movie or, just like go drive around somewhere, but no, we're going to Milan.
And let me tell you, if you've ever been to Milan, it is the place that makes you feel so underdressed everywhere. Like
I
it's a
can
Sunday morning. People are immaculate. You're like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, I don't want to dress up. It's Sunday morning, man. Yeah. It was quite cool, but she loved it. So
That's amazing. Yeah, obviously it worked out fine. Yeah. Okay. Next question. Who was your hacker hero? You can pick
that
more than one if you want.
um I've got a few who I'm now lucky to call them friends. Um, Joe Grand, 100% the nicest person in our industry.
Yeah.
Like super incredibly talented. Like I love hardware hacking. Joe is god tier, um, but he's just a nice person, and I think he, for me, encompasses everything that you want from a person to look up to. Nice, incredibly talented, will do anything to share knowledge. That Another one is Doug Song.
Yeah.
I love Doug.
Yeah.
From the D Smith days up to seeing the empire that he's built. Again, nice person, no attitude. Um, Other than that, Halvar Flake,
Mm.
just super, super intelligent person. But also, again, really nice. There's like a theme here. Just
Yeah,
no heavy egos. Just nice, genuine people.
that which is there are plenty of very large egos in our
Yeah,
industry and community, and very accomplished people that have very large egos. And you know Joe and Doug are two of my favorite people. They're the smartest but the nicest, most considerate, and as you said, will go out of their way to help anybody with anything. Like
yeah.
how you know Joe is like, yeah, it's ridiculous the amount of people he's helped with projects for you know 25 years and continues to. And Doug's the same way. It's amazing.
Yeah. Funny story about Joe. So obviously we are at Black Hat. Um, every year I like to go out to Red Rock just to like decompress, take some pictures. And Joe says no, he wants to come out for a run. I was like, cool. Right, there's no cell service. He was gonna keynote the DEF CON with the cool badge that he made.
Yeah.
So he's like, right, that was the day. We're gonna go out there. I'm gonna go and do photos. So we leave like Mandalay, 4 a.m. Drive all the way through, park up, and I say, listen, right, we'll be back here 7:45. Yeah, I'm gonna go do your thing. You're gonna go run. Cool. So go off we go. I do some beautiful landscapes, and if you've ever been to Red Rock Canyon that time in the morning, especially after Hacker Summer Camp, it is amazing. Zero noise, and it's such a for me. I'm not a spiritual person. Spiritual place to be.
Hmm.
Anyway, get back to the rental, pack all the gear up. Where's Joe? 7:45 comes. I was like, he's coming. 7:50 comes. He's coming. 7:55. I'm like, Jeff is gonna fuck me up. Like, wait, it's Joe Grant. Like, it's literally DEF CON's happening soon. 8:10. The sweaty man comes running up. He was like, oh my god, I fell down here. Da da da. I was like, Joe, dude, there's no cell signal out here. But yeah, so we got him back in
Yeah.
the car, rushed through to the hotel, cleaned up, and then he opened up with the amazing badge that he built. But again, took it in a stride, smiled all the time.
That's a very familiar story to me. I've been on a lot of long runs with Joe in Vegas, like during Black Hat over the years, when like I thought it was going to be, maybe we're going to do 5 or 6 miles, and it turns into like 9 or 10, and it's 95 degrees at 6 in the morning. You're just like,
Yeah,
this is. I love running as much as Joe does, but he's a machine,
he
and
is
like,
fast. He is
and he
very fast.
and he just kind of forgets. He's like, oh yeah, that's right. We got to turn around. Like, yeah, we do. Because one of us is going to die in the desert, and it's not going to be you. It's going to
Yeah.
be me.
But no, just a really cool dude. And there's plenty more. Like I
Yeah.
said, I'm really lucky. A lot of them are friends, and I still look up to them. And yeah, that's cool.
Awesome. All right. Question number 7, I think. What's your favorite hacker movie and why? I think I might have a guess, but
I've actually got two.
okay.
There's a War Games poster there. And War Games was the movie that got me into this world. Again, creative, not necessarily hacking as such, but then the best hacking movie ever is Sneakers
Yeah.
because it's just so intelligent. Like, it's not like that Disney rubbish hackers, right?
Right.
It's just clever narrative with, even today, I'd say probably one of the most representative hacking set of hacking scenes out there. All right, yeah, Mr. Robot was good, but we all know that who helped build all that. I totally get that. But if you watch Sneakers, and for our Black Hat talk, the machine there is the machine that breaks the internet. But so from Sneakers as well.
Yeah.
Just a clever plot with characters that are relatable, and you could like
Yep.
any pen testing company today, you would find one of the characters. So yeah, I
Oh,
thought,
no doubt. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. That's almost exactly my answer to this question too. Like War Games is the first one. I was, I don't know, 13 or 12 whenever that movie came out. And I remember watching it and sort of watching it at the surface level for the first time, right? You're like, oh, this is an awesome thriller movie. Like, how are they going to find this guy on this remote island and stop the nuclear war or whatever? And then you see it a few more times. You're like, oh, damn, this kid's like sort of tricking everybody. He's kind of like, yeah, he knows a little bit about computers that most people don't know at that point. He's got the weird friends in the computer lab at the university, who are just like, yeah, they're stereotypical, but they're also like perfect
yeah,
characters, like the nerd and the like the big sloppy guy or whatever. I love that. But Sneakers is just it's my favorite. I watch it probably 2 or 3 times a year,
Yeah,
just because it's so note perfect. Redford's great, Aykroyd, the whole thing.
yeah,
I love every part of it.
yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. It's just a good film.
yeah. And the social engineering part of that is just out of this world. Like
The, the
Redford's got an answer for everything because he's Robert Redford, but um,
you know how
yeah,
many people use the balloons and cake thing? It's still to today. It works.
it's really good.
Yeah,
Like, it was what was it, a birthday cake for somebody up on like
yeah.
floor 7 or whatever. Yeah,
Very clever. Very,
it's
very, very well produced and written film. Definitely.
yeah. They certainly had some good consultants on that,
Yeah.
no doubt about it. Okay, question number 8. When you meet somebody new that doesn't really know what you do, how do you describe your job to them?
That's a really hard one.
Yeah.
Um, I guess do security research. It's broken down into a number of areas. There's a big chunk of offensive capability to that. Um, we do operate a lot like Project Zero. We tear apart a lot of software, find the bugs, report the bugs, and go down that route.
Hmm.
Then we're also looking at attacks that are happening and how we can prevent them at scale. And it really is scale. And that could be things that then morph into like the project Mark Conley and I have been doing on post quantum cryptography. We spent a good couple of years looking into it. Um, I bugged Nero at GitHub last year where I had an idea of, hey, could we borrow GitHub and scan all the top 1,000 dependencies on GitHub looking for insecure post quantum type stuff, which morphed into crypto agility and crypto awareness. So, like, you go down a lot of rabbit holes.
Yeah.
And then the cool part is the building stuff. So we do a lot of hardware prototyping, building things, like just basically here's a problem, look at ways of fixing it, or glance into the future what you think is going to be a problem in 2 years, or hey, can you help with this problem that's happening right now?
That's pretty cool. That sounds like a dream job for a hacker.
It is, and I feel very privileged. They are very supportive of giving us space, and just this week we've done a phenomenal piece of hardware hacking, which is like one of those cool things. You're like, yeah, we proved something, we've done it. Now we've got to think of ways of fixing it, and I find that really enjoyable. Like it's really really cool. And the cool thing is like, I do a lot of fraud research because it's rarely reported on. You hear about people doing fraud, but actually, like they're very creative, and there are pockets in the world where I think the hacking industry is so focused on hackers being either from Russia or China, or the research industry being American or European.
Hmm.
Hey team, there's a whole thing called Latin America up there, and let me tell you, like they also the Brazilians. I've said this before. Are some of the most creative hackers I've ever had the pleasure of working with, hands
They
down.
kind of invented bank fraud about 20 years ago. I mean,
Yeah, and they don't have much. And that old adage of those who have little often do amazing things, you never hear of it.
yeah.
So yeah.
How much of that, the research that you guys do, gets to see the public light of day, and how much do you have to keep in house?
Sorry. I'd like to push out more. I think this year we will be doing that as much as possible. There's some things we can't share. We made a decision when we found a lot of bugs not to go down the CV route.
Hmm.
It's not like we're chasing them. It's just we'd rather see the products that lots and lots of people use fixed.
Yeah.
So you can still see telltale signs. A couple of years ago, we found a whole lot of vulnerabilities in an HSM. It took 2 years for them to acknowledge and go public on them, which was really cool. But there's no big fanfare. So yeah, I'd like to push more stuff out. December we released Crypto Bomb Forge that GitHub is now using. A lot of people are using, so that was a really lovely moment. We've
Nice.
released tools here and there, but yeah, this year I want to start pushing more stuff out.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Question number 9 is kind of a two-part question. What was your biggest mistake, and what was your proudest moment? So this can be career related, however you want to take it.
Biggest mistake. There's been many. Uh, I think doing what I did in 2004 for the whole tsunami hacking case, which I won't go into detail. People can Google it. I think it was a stupid thing to do because of the effects that it had. So I lost pretty much everything. I was almost homeless, lost a lot of jobs, and that kind of put me into a downward spiral of just hating the industry. Um, yeah, it was a stupid thing to do, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Um, Proudest moment, probably recently, being asked to co-chair UK government cybersecurity advisory board. That's something I take really seriously because this is the same government that arrested me and went after me. So it's almost like full circle. So yeah, this is probably one of the top things. And then last week it was the 20th anniversary of OWASP for
Yeah.
London, and to see OWASP grow from a few of us when Mark did it to what it is now, like it's still really humbling. At Google, we had 250 people. There were more on the waiting list. Hearing people like, I didn't realize NASA uses the ASVS. Like, what?
That's awesome.
Like, there's things like that that make me incredibly humble that people are still doing that.
Yeah. It's kind of hard for me to believe that OWASP is 20 years old. I'm sure it's hard for you to believe too, but
Well,
I,
it's 22 now. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's just incredible to me because I remember when that started and I was like, oh, this is a cool project. And yeah, that was more than 2 decades ago, which is
Yeah.
just unbelievable.
Yeah. It is.
And the release of like the OWASP top 10 used to be a huge deal every year because like, okay, these are the things that, attackers are targeting and we need to sort of,
Yeah.
pay attention to. It was always, a big thing.
Yeah. No, definitely. Definitely.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, you should be very proud of the UK advisory committee. That's amazing. It's it's especially sort of the full circle part of it that you mentioned. That's
Look,
awesome.
I've still got imposter syndrome. I can honestly say that. I still go to meetings thinking, what the hell am I doing here? So, yeah.
It's a very common affliction. And I never even, it's not something I even really knew about until like maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And I started hearing about it from people in this community. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's more prevalent here or it's just the people that I happen to know, but it's an interesting thing when you hear some of the most accomplished people in the community say that. You're just like, well, wait a second. If that man or guy or woman thinks that way, then crap, I should probably think that way. But you
Yeah.
know, it,
I
it
mean,
might just be a natural human emotion. You know.
I think it is. Like, I have a lot of self doubt. I am an introvert by nature.
Hmm.
Um, and you do have that. Why am I here?
Yeah.
Um, like when they asked me to keynote Blackout, I was like, what? There are far better people out there to do it. And I literally had one of those, oh shit moments. Because
Yeah.
you're like, what? Like, are you mad? I remember when Dino did it.
Yeah.
At my game, you could see, and I said to him, nervous as hell. When Barista did it, like you could see these amazing people. You're like, for me, are you mad? Like, Jesus. Yeah.
Well, you made it, so don't stop doubting yourself.
Like,
All right. Last question. Well, question number 10. Yeah. What's your best piece of security advice? Could be, I mean, it's hard to narrow down, but if, anything you want to say.
you know what? I am a big fan of MFA now. Like, I really am. I love. I just. I'm surrounded by them. Like,
Yeah.
I just think they make such a difference. They really do. I got that from working with Duo and seeing the cool stuff that Doug and John were doing. I was like,
Hmm.
actually, this really is making it very expensive for an attacker, and I love that. And I think if people just looked at just tweaking or turning on where it was available, you see a massive difference. You really do.
Yeah. And it's not difficult. It used to be a lot more, the hurdle was a little higher for, maybe not so technical people to figure out how to do it, but it's really not that hard
No,
anymore.
you look at passkeys. Like as
Yeah.
much as people want to rubbish what Apple does, they've made it very easy to use. Like it's not a mega long node thing anymore. It's plug stuff. There you go.
Yeah.
Like,
That's right. I actually had somebody ask me this question maybe a month ago. I was out at a bar with a couple of friends and we were just talking about with the bartender about what we did. The guy was like, "Oh, I don't know anything about security. What's the one thing I can do to make myself like to safer?" And I was like, "MFA on every account you can
yeah,
you can enable it on, and that's probably most these days.
yeah,
It's typically not that hard to set up."
yeah. Definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, there's lots of things. I think we get definitely bogged down in the super elite technical stuff.
Yeah.
But I think what was annoying about the whole rise of ransomware is they're not super lethal technical. Like
No.
they are going after really basic flaws, flaws that we as an industry should not have. And yeah, I'm not going to go into the rant about security vendors who have failed us completely. But a lot of the times, it's like just really simple things that just a little bit of a tweak, and you've made it really hard for that attacker.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot like the rest of life. Like do the simple things and you'll probably be okay. Stop complicating your life.
Agree, 100% agree.
All right. Last question is, do you have any questions for me?
Who has been the hardest person you've interviewed?
Oh man, what a great question. I don't know about hardest. I can say there's been a few that have been intimidating.
In what
Um,
way? And how were they intimidating?
sort of, it can be one of a couple of ways. One is where it's somebody that's just like very well known. I've interviewed, some, like uh, Mark Cuban, like a long time ago, before when he was just like, I think he had just sold his company, but it was in a group setting, so I didn't really even get to say anything. But even then, I was like, um, folks like that, where you're just kind of like, this is a really accomplished person, and I know they don't have a lot of time for nonsense, so I have to be on my game here. But other times, it's just sometimes it's somebody that's like doesn't really want to talk and is very introverted, and you have to sort of get them to sort of come
Yeah.
out of their shells a little bit, which is not an easy thing to do. But I don't know about the hardest. Gosh, yeah.
You can
What a
say
great
Casey. Come on, just say Casey.
Casey would be a great answer, but Casey's such a nice guy that
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just like there's nobody would believe that.
He is literally the Mick Dundee of security. He really is.
He's the night. Yeah, it's just yeah. He's such a good dude. Yeah, I mean some of the old MSRC folks who were not real interested in talking to the press at all. I spent a lot of time talking to those guys at parties at Black Hat and things like that and trying to build up relationships with them and, finally build a rapport. Um, those were tough, but that wasn't like this, what we're doing. You know, it's easier when I know the person a little bit, but if it's somebody that I don't know at all and don't have any kind of relationship with, those are the really hard ones because you don't have any context clues. You don't have any sort of
Yeah, yeah,
way to sort of fall back on something.
yeah. No, definitely. And our industry is a tough one because it's there are a lot of introverts. There's
Yeah.
a lot of people that are natively shy. Um, so the art of conversing and getting people to open up is no mean feat. So yeah, I don't envy you. I find it very hard, very very hard.
it, it's a lot of fun for me, but you're right about the introvert thing, which is funny because there's a lot of people that I know in the industry who have told me over the years that they're extreme introverts. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? You like, we have great conversations all the time. And they're like, yeah, but I know you, but I don't really want to talk to anybody else. Like, I'll just go stand over here in this corner. I won't even go to the
That's
party.
me.
I'll be up in my hotel room.
That's me.
I,
I am very lucky. My wife is an extrovert. So when we go to a party, I am hiding away. She's the social person.
yeah.
But I'm like that at Black Hat or DEF CON. Like I find it very hard to walk into a room with people. Like I really do. I'd rather go and hide. And many a time I have snuck off and just gone back to my hotel room,
I
especially
do
with
that too. Even
it's
though
like,
I'm an extrovert, I'll certainly be like, you know what? Time's up. I've had enough.
yeah,
Like after an hour or something, I'm like, well, I'm gonna go watch,
bad
soccer game.
TV. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty right. All right. Well, Daniel, thanks so much for doing this, dude. I really appreciate it. It was a
Thank
ton
you.
of fun. And hopefully I'll get to see you soon.
You will definitely see me in Vegas this year, 100%. And like,
Awesome.
thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Cheers.